So, quick story. I remember when I was in fifth grade, we had moved to a new place. Couldn't really call it a town. It wasn't even incorporated. It was that small. And I was at this little school, um, and all the guys in my class, my fifth grade class, were into baseball cards, and me too. And I found this story in a book or something, and it was about the most expensive or most valuable baseball card in the history of baseball cards. And I want to say the baseball player was Horace Wagner. I may be wrong with that name. Those of you who are really into baseball, y'all can correct me on that. But uh, I told my friends, hey, I read about this in a book, and they lost their mind. I should say friends in quotes here. Because they were like, no, that can't be true. They just can't be true. You're making that up. Blah 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 blah. I mean, it was just. I was like, what? We ended up arguing forever about this. I showed them the book. They still didn't buy it. And like a week later, one of them found the same story in a different book and acted like they had made the discovery themselves. And everybody bought it. Everybody agreed with them. I was like, what? What's going on? And looking back on this decades later, I was an outsider. And I didn't have the accreditation of the community that they did, that they're of having grown up together. And because I wasn't functioning the same way as the community that they had grown up in to that point operated, I was from the outside. Therefore, there was no way that I could have more knowledge than them in their limited worldview. Again, we're talking about fifth grade boys. We're not talking about uber sophistication here, but that's what was going on. They were threatened by an outsider. Chapter 9 is a healing story and an argument that follows after it about the veracity of the healing. It has a lot to do with Jesus functioning outside of the normal power structures. So let's take a listen. Big thanks to Francis Alleshouse for being our reader today. And I'll be back after the reading with some more thoughts on this.
A reading from John chapter 9. And as Jesus passed by, he saw a man which was blind from his birth. And his disciples asked him, saying, Master, who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, Neither hath this man sinned, nor his parents, but that the works of God should be made manifest in him. I must work the works of him that sent me, which it is day, the night cometh when no man can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. When he had thus spoken, he spat on the ground and made clay of the spittle, and he anointed the eyes of the blind man with clay. And he said unto him, Go wash in the pool of Siloam. He went his way, therefore, and washed and came seeing. The neighbors, therefore, and they which before had seen him that he was blind, said, Is not this he that sat and begged? Some said, This is he. Others said, He is like him. But he said, I am he. Therefore, they unto him, How were thine eyes open? He answered and said, A man that is called Jesus made clay, and anointed my eyes, and said unto me, Go to the pool of Siloam, and wash. And I went and washed, and I received sight. Then they said unto him, Where is he? He said, I know not. They brought to the Pharisees him that aforetime was blind. And it was the Sabbath day when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. Then again the Pharisees also asked him how he had received his sight. He said unto them, He put clay upon my eyes, and I washed it, and do see. Therefore said some of the Pharisees, This man is not of God, because he kept not the Sabbath day. Others said, How can a man that is a sinner do such miracles? And there was a division among them. They say unto the blind man again, What sayest thou of him, that he hath opened thine eyes? He said he is a prophet. But the Jews did not believe concerning him that he had been blind and received his sight until they called the parents of him that had received his sight. And they asked them, saying, Is this your son, who ye say was born blind? And how then now he now see? His parents answered them and said, We know that this is our son, and that he was born blind. But by what means he now seeth, we know not. Or who hath opened his eyes? We know not. He is of age. Ask him. He shall speak for himself. These words spake his parents because they feared the Jews, for the Jews had agreed already that if any man did confess that he was Christ, he should be put out of the synagogue. Therefore, said his parents, He is of age. Ask him. Then again called they the man that was blind, and said unto him, Give God the praise. We know that this man is a sinner. He answered and said, Whether he be a sinner or no, I know not. One thing I know, that whereas I was blind, and now I see. Then they said to him again, What did he to thee? How opened he thine eyes? He answered them, I have told you already, and ye did not hear. Wherefore would ye hear it again? Will ye also be his disciples? Then they reviled him and said, Thou art his disciple, but we are Moses' disciples. We know that God spake unto Moses. As for this fellow, we know not from whence he is. The man answered and said unto them, Why herein is a marvelous thing, that ye know not from whence he is, and yet he hath opened my eyes. Now we know that God heareth not sinners. But if any man be a worshipper of God, and doth his will, him he heareth. Since the world began, was it not heard that any man opened the eyes of one that was born blind? If this man were not of God, he could do nothing. They answered and said unto him, Thou wast altogether born in sins, and dost thou now teach us? And they cast him out. Jesus heard that they had cast him out, and when he had found him, he said unto him, Dost thou believe on the Son of God? He answered and said, Who is he, Lord, that I might believe on him? And Jesus said unto him, Thou hast both seen him, and it is he that talketh with thee. And he said, Lord, I believe. And he worshipped him. And Jesus said, For judgment I come into the world, and that they which see not might see, and that they which see might be made blind. And some of the Pharisees which were with him heard these words, and said unto him, Are we blind also? Jesus said unto them, If ye were blind, ye should have no sin. But now ye say, We see, therefore your sin remaineth.
So we heard the story of this healing, but the healing happens on the Sabbath. So when the Pharisees get wind of it, they're like, well, it can't be. This is not how we operate. And we should have some compassion for the Pharisees here, because there was a reigning theology in this, what's called Second Temple Judaism. This is the time after the exile, after people returned from Babylon, eventually built a second temple, and that's the temple in which Jesus, and it was standing in the time of Jesus, in which Jesus worshiped at, and which the Pharisees considered to be the center of worship to God as well. And so within Second Temple Judaism, there was a notion that the exile had not ended because people had not completely returned to the practice of Torah. And Sabbath keeping was one sign of Torah observance. And so the Pharisees were pushing for this Torah observance in the extreme. And so Jesus heals on the Sabbath. That's from the outside. That's from a different way than they think. And so they are threatened by that because it also works, like the guy gets healed. So there's this debate. How, even amongst the Pharisees, it says around verse 16 or so, that some said this man can't be from God because he healed on the Sabbath, and others are saying, but if he wasn't of God, he wouldn't be able to perform these signs, the signs of the healings and the miracles that we've read about already, including this one. And so there's a real debate: can authority come from outside? Going on, and Jesus is very much labeled as the outsider. Now, one thing that can mean for us is that when we are looking for the authority of Jesus, sometimes we need to look outside of ourselves, look outside of our congregations, look outside of the power structures of our denomination, and be willing to listen to voices from unexpected places and unexpected people, like this blind man, to see and witness the works of Jesus in the world now. What about you? Have you ever had an experience when somebody didn't believe you because you weren't part of the system? And what was that like? Tomorrow we're getting into chapter 10, and I hope you remember at all times, God loves you more than you can possibly imagine.